Hello, this is John Smith, and welcome to the Psalming Effect for this week. Today is Monday, May the 10th of 2021. And today's Psalming Effect is a meditation from Psalm 24. But before I read the psalm and the meditation that goes with it, there's a story I need to tell you, a problem that I have. And it has to do with gates, not the people named Gates, and not walking, the style of walking or the pace or stride. That's not what I mean by gates. I'm talking about the doors, the openings on fences or walls or other things where they're called gates. Okay, so. My story is this. In my backyard, I have a gate problem, a gating problem. And here's what it is. One corner of my backyard, a fairly significant section of it, is actually two parking spaces and some extra space that is open to the back alley that I have access to come in and park there. But it's not really in use right now. I don't have my little utility trailer and my vehicle that pulls it, so I'm not using that space at all. And here's what's frustrating though, is that my back fence doesn't close that space into my backyard. Instead, what it does is about 3/4 of the way along the back of my property, the fence turns, has a corner, and then extends into my yard along where I have a shed that butts up against it. And there's one gate that allows me to go from that parking space into the area behind the shed. The main door to the shed is accessed off of that little parking spot, and then the fence turns a corner past the shed and then goes the rest of the way across the yard and connects with the neighbor's fence. So there's another gate on that little section of fence so that I can get from my backyard into the parking space and then into the shed. And then if I want to get into the shed, well, then I have to go around behind the in through another gate to get in behind to the area behind the shed from that parking space. And so it's really annoying. What I would like to do is I would like to finish the fence all the way across the back of my property with a gate. Okay, just a single gate that right now I would hardly ever use. And then I could eliminate the gates that I'm currently having to go through to get from my yard to the main door of the shed, and from the main door of the shed to the stuff I have behind the shed, my wheelbarrow and other things back there. I could eliminate having to prop those gates open and close them when I'm done in order to be sealed off from the back alley. So that's my gate problem. Okay? Now, why should you care? Well, you probably shouldn't care unless you've got some fence boards and you want to come and help finish that gate for me. I'm not in a hurry to do that right now with the price of fence boards. But Psalm 24 talks about gates. And so as soon as I read this psalm, because my mind is on this gating problem that I have in my backyard, that's what immediately caught my attention in this psalm. Let me read the psalm to you, and then we'll draw the spiritual thoughts out of it. It's 10 verses, so I'll read the whole thing. But it's towards the last part of the psalm that you hear talk about gates. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it, for he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? those who have clean hands and pure hearts, who do not lift up their souls to what is false and do not swear deceitfully. They will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from the God of their salvation. Such is the company of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. So the idea of gates and doors being used in this psalm has to do with entry. And the first part of the psalm is talking about, well, who may enter into the presence of God? You know, who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? The city of Jerusalem for the Jews was located on the mount, the mount on a mountain. And so they ascended the mountain and they built the city and they built the temple there. And that was their holiest place. That was their meeting place with God. If they wanted to go to the holy place where they could find atonement, where they could offer sacrifice, then they ascended the mount. Okay, but Jerusalem was a walled city and a gated city. So access into the city was through the gates. And so even though it was the dwelling place of God, access was given by the gates. And so when those verses say, "Be lifted up, O gates, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in," so the city also, symbolically, the temple and the gates also symbolically represented not just the people who were wanting to come into the presence of God, gaining access, but it was also about the presence of God coming and dwelling with his people. Gates kind of, even if they only swing in one direction or go up as it sounds like these gates did, but what they do is they provide access both for going both directions. And that's interesting for us because in the New Testament, we also hear about gates or the door. Jesus talks about it. And for instance, in Matthew 7 and verse 13, he says, "Enter through the gate. Enter through the gate and take the narrow gate and the road that is straight." And similar to some of the thoughts in Psalm 24, he's talking about those who choose the path of holiness, not the separate path. Holiness, sacred, it just means apart. And so it means a path that is set apart from what everybody else is doing. And so that's what Jesus is inviting people to do. Come to God through the narrow gate. So it's about people having access to God. But then he also talked about in John chapter 10, in his teachings about him being the good shepherd, he also said that I am the gate, meaning himself. Jesus was the gate. He was the access. And people would come through him and find pasture and find relationship with God. And John 14 verse 6, he says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." Jesus is our gate. He's the pathway for us to go into the presence of God, and he's the pathway, the gateway for God to come into our lives and be present in our lives. Jesus is the gateway, and he's not symbolic. Okay, the gates of Jerusalem, that was a symbolic gate. and a symbolic separation in a lot of ways too, of the spiritual separation that existed between God and the people, and that God bridged. But the bridging, or the opening of the gate, was done ultimately through Jesus Christ, and this was very real. For us, we don't walk through some kind of symbolic gate. We have the very real access to God, which is Jesus Christ. The access where we, through him, abide with God, and he abides with us, within us. Lift up the gates. Lift up your heads, O gates. Be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. So whenever you go through a gate, in or out of your yard, through the fence into your neighbors or out onto the street, or whenever you go in and out of a door, and I'm sure you're going to do that quite a bit, in and out of your house, or even just one room to another within your house, think about the access that Jesus gives you to God, and that God has to you through Jesus Christ. Primarily his work, his redeeming work on the cross. He is the gate, he is the door. Wonderful blessing. There's lots to dwell on, actually, that could keep you busy all week from Psalm 24, and I encourage you to do that. But I wanted us to start with the gate, because in 21, he's still the one.